The pawnshop owner's hands shake as he slides the receipt across the stained glass counter. And I know before I even look at the elegant handwriting that my world is about to shatter into pieces sharper than the diamonds Elena wore on our wedding day just 6 months ago, my father's Patek Philippe watch, the one he wore through 30 years of building Chen Industries from a small import business into a global empire, the one that survived his death in that terrible car accident last year, the one that was supposed to be passed down through generations of Chen men, sold for $50,000 to cover someone else's rent. Your wife seemed very upset, the pawnshop owner says quietly, his weathered face creased with what might be sympathy or might just be the uncomfortable expression of a man who deals in other people's desperation every day. She said it was an emergency, that someone she cared about was going to lose everything if she didn't help them immediately. I stare at the receipt until the numbers blur together, my mind racing through every conversation Elena and I have had in the past week, searching for any mention of a dental emergency or medical crisis, or any reason she might need $50,000 in cash. But all I can remember is her kissing me goodbye this morning and telling me she was going shopping with her mother Carmen for new curtains for our bedroom. The lies taste bitter in my mouth, even though I haven't spoken them, and I realize that somewhere deep in my chest, a part of me that had been holding on to hope for our marriage has just died as quietly and completely as my father did on that rainy night when his brakes failed on the mountain road. "Do you know who she was helping?" I ask, though I'm not sure I want to hear the answer, because the security footage the pawnshop owner showed me 20 minutes ago revealed Elena taking my father's watch from our bedroom safe, with the careful precision of someone who had been planning this moment for weeks. "She mentioned a name," he says reluctantly, glancing around his cluttered shop filled with other people's surrendered treasures. "Dylan something. Said he was an artist who couldn't make his rent, and she couldn't bear to watch him lose his studio." Dylan Torres. The name hits me like a physical blow because I know exactly who he is. Elena's college friend who she claimed was like a brother to her. The struggling artist she always spoke about with such fondness and concern. The one she said reminded her of the creative dreams she had given up to marry me. The one who calls her at odd hours and sends her long text messages that she always dismisses as just Dylan being dramatic about his art when I ask about them. The one whose gallery openings she attends alone because she says I wouldn't understand the artistic vision, and the one who somehow always needs just a little help to make it through each month. I drive home through the Seattle evening traffic with my father's receipt burning a hole in my jacket pocket, my mind constructing and discarding theories about what could possibly justify Elena selling the one thing in our house that wasn't hers to sell, the one thing she knew meant more to me than any amount of money. Maybe Dylan really was in trouble. Maybe there was some crisis I didn't know about. Maybe Elena panicked and made a terrible decision that she would explain and apologize for and somehow make right. But even as I try to convince myself that there's an innocent explanation, I'm already planning how to check our joint bank accounts and credit card statements because a woman who would steal and sell her husband's most precious inheritance might have been stealing other things too. The Chen family mansion sits on 3 acres of manicured grounds overlooking Puget Sound, its Victorian architecture and perfectly maintained gardens, a testament to 4 generations of careful wealth management and social positioning. And as I pull through the iron gates that my great-grandfather installed when he first bought this property in 1952, I realize that Elena has been living in this house for 6 months without ever truly understanding what it represents. This isn't just a home. It's the physical manifestation of everything my family built through decades of sacrifice and strategic thinking. Every room filled with furniture and artwork and memories that connect me to ancestors who fled China with nothing but determination, and the watch that Elena just pawned to help her friend pay his rent. Elena's car sits in the circular driveway, her silver BMW gleaming under the estate's carefully positioned landscape lighting. And I can see through the tall windows that she's moving around in our bedroom on the second floor, probably preparing for another evening of playing the perfect wife while planning her next betrayal. I sit in my car for several minutes, watching her silhouette as she moves from the walk-in closet to the vanity where she keeps her jewelry, wondering how many times she's stood in that exact spot while planning how to systematically strip away everything my father worked to build. The front door opens before I can even turn my key, and Elena appears in the doorway, wearing the cream silk dress I bought her for her birthday last month, her dark hair perfectly styled, and her smile so warm and genuine that for just a moment I almost convince myself that the receipt in my pocket belongs to someone else's tragedy. She rises on her tiptoes to kiss me, her lips soft against mine, her hands smoothing the lapels of my suit jacket with the practiced intimacy of a woman who has spent months learning exactly how to touch me to make me forget my suspicions. "How was your day, darling?" she asks, linking her arm through mine as we walk into the marble foyer where our wedding portrait hangs in a place of honor, both of us smiling with what I had believed was genuine happiness. "You look tired. Why don't you go upstairs and change while I finish making dinner? I'm trying that recipe your mother gave me for the lamb with rosemary." I study her face for any sign that she's nervous or guilty or aware that I've discovered her theft. But Elena has always been remarkably good at controlling her expressions, a skill I once found charming and mysterious, but now recognize as the calculated ability of someone who has spent years practicing deception. Her brown eyes meet mine with perfect sincerity, her smile never wavering, and I realize that she's probably been planning what to say to me about the missing watch, preparing her explanations and justifications while she cooked dinner and set the table with our wedding china. "Elena?" I say quietly, my voice steady despite the rage building in my chest like a slow-burning fire. "I went by Mitchell & Son's pawn shop today." The change in her expression is so subtle that I almost miss it. Just a tiny tightening around her eyes and a barely perceptible pause before she responds, but it's enough to confirm what I already knew. She doesn't ask why I went to a pawn shop or express confusion about the random statement, which means she knows exactly why I'm bringing it up and has been expecting this conversation. "Oh," she says softly, her hand moving to her throat in a gesture that might look nervous to someone who doesn't know her well, but which I recognize as one of her tells when she's about to lie. "I suppose you found out about the watch?" The casual way she says it, as if pawning my father's most precious possession is something we might discuss over dinner like the weather or weekend plans, makes my vision blur red around the edges. I pull the receipt from my pocket and hold it between us, watching as she glances at it without any real surprise or shame, and I realize that Elena has been planning this moment for weeks, preparing exactly what she would say when I inevitably discovered what she had done. "Your friend Dylan needed help with his rent," I say, each word carefully controlled because I know that if I let myself get angry now, I'll say things that can't be taken back, and she'll use my anger as a weapon against me later. "And you decided that my father's watch was the solution to his problem." Elena's eyes fill with tears so quickly and naturally that I'm momentarily impressed by her acting ability, and she reaches for my hands with the desperate gesture of a woman who has been caught but still believes she can manipulate her way out of consequences. The tears make tracks down her cheeks, and her voice breaks with exactly the right amount of emotion as she begins the performance I now realize she's been rehearsing. "Marcus, I'm so sorry. I know I should have asked you first, but Dylan was going to be evicted and I couldn't just stand by and watch him lose everything when we have so much," she says, her grip on my hands tightening as if she can somehow transfer her desperation through touch. "You know how much his art means to him. It would have destroyed him to lose his studio, and I thought you would understand if I explained it properly." "You thought I would understand." I repeat slowly, pulling my hands away from hers and watching as her tears continue to fall with perfect timing. You thought I would understand why you stole my father's watch, the only thing I have left of him, and sold it without asking me, without even telling me to help a man I've met exactly 3 times in our entire relationship. It's not stealing if it's from my own house, Elena says, and there's a flash of something cold and calculating in her eyes before the tears take over again. We're married, Marcus. What's yours is mine, and what's mine is yours. I was going to tell you about it tonight. I was just waiting for the right moment to explain. The casual possessiveness in her voice when she says, "my own house," makes me understand that Elena has never seen our marriage as a partnership between equals, but rather as a business arrangement where she has equal claim to everything my family built over 4 generations. She doesn't see the Chen family mansion as my ancestral home that she's been welcomed into. She sees it as property she acquired through marriage, and my father's watch was just another asset she could liquidate when convenient. $50,000, Elena, I say, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. You sold a watch worth 10 times that amount for $50,000 to help a man who calls you at midnight and sends you photos of his paintings and somehow always needs just enough money to survive another month. Her face goes very still, and I realize that she didn't expect me to know about Dylan's calls and messages, which means there are probably other communications between them that she's been hiding more carefully. The silence stretches between us, filled with unspoken accusations and the growing certainty that the woman I married is not the woman I thought she was. "How long have you been checking my phone?" she asks finally. And the fact that her first instinct is to accuse me of violating her privacy rather than explain why another man is contacting my wife at inappropriate hours tells me everything I need to know about where her loyalties truly lie. "I'm not checking your phone, Elena. I'm paying attention to my wife receiving calls at midnight from a man who needs constant financial assistance. I pull out my own phone and show her our joint bank account, scrolling through months of transfers and withdrawals that I had dismissed as Elena's normal shopping expenses, but now recognize as a pattern of financial support for someone else. I'm also paying attention to the fact that you've withdrawn over $30,000 in cash over the past 4 months, all in amounts just small enough that I wouldn't notice." Elena's face goes pale as she stares at the bank records, and I can see her mind racing as she tries to calculate exactly how much evidence I have, and how much of her deception has been uncovered. She's no longer crying, and the calculated look in her eyes reminds me of my competitors during hostile business negotiations, sizing up their opponent and planning their next move. "You're making this sound much worse than it is," she says finally, her voice steadier now that she's moved from the emotional manipulation phase to what I'm beginning to recognize as her strategic damage control phase. "Dylan is like family to me, Marcus. We've been friends since college, and he's going through a difficult period in his career. I've been helping him because that's what friends do for each other." "Friends," I repeat, and something in my tone makes Elena take a step backward. "Is that what you call a man who sends you photos at 11 o'clock at night and calls you beautiful in text messages? Is that what you call someone who somehow requires thousands of dollars in support every month, despite the fact that he's a grown man with an art degree?" The look of shock that crosses Elena's face tells me that she had no idea I knew about the content of Dylan's messages, and I realize that she's been living a completely separate life that includes intimate communications with another man and regular financial transactions that she's hidden from her husband. The woman standing in front of me isn't the devoted wife who cooks my favorite meals and plans romantic evenings. She's a stranger who has been systematically deceiving me for months while living in my family's house and spending my family's money. "It's not what you think," Elena says quickly, but her voice lacks conviction now, and I can see her realizing that her usual manipulation tactics aren't working the way they have in the past. Dylan is emotional and dramatic because he's an artist. The way he talks doesn't mean anything. It's just his personality. His personality, I say, and I pull up the last text message Dylan sent her, the one that came through at 11:47 last night, while Elena was lying next to me in our bed, pretending to sleep. His personality includes telling my wife that he dreams about her, and that she's the only person who truly understands his soul. Elena's hand flies to her mouth, and I realize that she thought she had been more careful about hiding these communications. The shock in her eyes gradually transforms into something that looks almost like relief, as if she's tired of maintaining the pretense of our marriage and is ready to drop the facade entirely. "You wouldn't understand," she says finally, and there's a defiance in her voice now that I've never heard before. "You work 16 hours a day. You live for spreadsheets and board meetings and profit margins. Dylan sees the world the way I used to before I married you and forgot what it felt like to be passionate about something beautiful." The casual cruelty of her words hits me harder than her theft of my father's watch, because she's essentially telling me that our entire marriage has been a mistake, that she sees me as some sort of soulless businessman who trapped her in a life of financial security that she never wanted. But there's something else in her voice, something that sounds almost rehearsed, as if she's been practicing this speech about my inadequacies for months. "You forgot what it felt like to be passionate about something beautiful," I repeat slowly. And I'm genuinely curious now about how she's rationalized stealing from her husband to support another man. "So you decided to remember by sending him thousands of dollars every month and pawning my family heirlooms to pay his rent?" "You don't understand what it's like to have dreams," Elena says, and now she's getting angry, her carefully controlled mask slipping to reveal someone I don't recognize. "You inherited everything: the company, the house, the money, the social position. You've never had to worry about losing something you've worked for because everything was just handed to you." The accusation stings because there's enough truth in it to make me doubt myself for a moment. But then I remember the countless 18-hour days I've spent learning every aspect of Chen Industries, the years I devoted to earning my MBA, and proving to my father that I was worthy of inheriting his life's work, the sacrifices I made to honor my family's legacy and build something even greater for future generations. I inherited the responsibility, I say quietly, and something in my tone makes Elena stop her angry pacing and look at me carefully. I inherited the obligation to protect what my family built and to make sure it continues to grow and prosper. What I didn't inherit was a wife who would steal from me to support another man and then lecture me about not understanding passion. Elena's face flushes red, and I can see her realizing that her attempts to justify her betrayal by attacking my character have only made her position worse. She opens her mouth to respond, then closes it again, and I recognize the look of someone who has run out of manipulation tactics and is starting to panic. "I want a divorce," she says suddenly, the words coming out in a rush as if she's been holding them back for months. "I want out of this marriage, Marcus. I want to be with someone who actually loves me for who I am, instead of what I represent." The relief that floods through me is so overwhelming that I almost laugh, because Elena has just solved the problem I didn't know how to solve myself. She's confessed to stealing from me, supporting another man, and now she's asking for exactly what I would have been too honorable to ask for myself. But there's something about the timing of her announcement that seems calculated, as if she's been planning this moment and waiting for the right opportunity to maximize the damage. "You want a divorce?" I say slowly, studying her face for any sign of uncertainty or regret, but finding only determination and what might be anticipation. "You want to leave our marriage to be with Dylan Torres?" "Yes," Elena says, lifting her chin in a gesture of defiance that reminds me of a teenager asserting her independence. I want to be with someone who appreciates my mind and my dreams, not someone who sees me as an ornament for his perfect life. I nod thoughtfully, as if I'm considering her request, while my mind races through the financial and legal implications of divorce, the division of assets, the impact on Chen Industries if our separation becomes public knowledge, and the social embarrassment of being abandoned by my wife of 6 months for a struggling artist she's been supporting with my money. I assume you've already discussed this with Dylan, I say, and Elena's quick flush tells me that I'm right. I assume he knows that you're planning to leave your husband for him, and that he's prepared to support you financially once you're no longer able to access my bank accounts. Elena's confident expression wavers for the first time, and I realize that she and Dylan have been so focused on the romantic fantasy of their relationship that they haven't actually considered the practical realities of living together without my financial support. She probably imagines that she'll receive a substantial settlement in our divorce, enough to support both herself and Dylan while he pursues his artistic career, but she doesn't understand how carefully my family's wealth has been protected through trusts and prenuptial agreements. "Dylan loves me," Elena says, but there's a note of uncertainty in her voice now. "He wants to build a life with me, based on mutual respect and shared dreams, not financial dependence." Mutual respect, I repeat, and I can't keep the bitter amusement out of my voice. "Is that what you call pawning your husband's irreplaceable family heirloom to pay another man's rent? Is that what you call lying to me for months while conducting an emotional affair behind my back?" Elena's face crumples, and for a moment she looks genuinely distressed, but I'm no longer sure if her emotions are real or just another manipulation tactic. She's been deceiving me so skillfully for so long that I don't know if she's capable of genuine honesty anymore. "I never meant for it to happen this way," she whispers, and tears start flowing again, but they seem different now, more desperate and less controlled. "I tried to love you the way a wife should love her husband, but Dylan understands parts of me that you never even knew existed." The admission that she tried to love me confirms what I've been suspecting, that our entire marriage has been a performance on her part, an attempt to convince herself and me that she could be happy in a life that never truly fit her dreams or desires. But there's still something about her confession that sounds rehearsed, as if she's been planning exactly what to say when this moment finally arrived. "Parts of you that I never knew existed," I say slowly, and I'm genuinely curious now about how long Elena has been planning this betrayal. How long have you been in love with Dylan, Elena? How long have you been lying in our bed next to me while wishing you were with him? She can't meet my eyes when she answers, and her voice is so quiet I almost don't hear her. "Since before our wedding." The words hit me like a physical blow, because she's telling me that she married me while already in love with another man, that she stood in front of our families and friends and promised to love and honor me while planning to leave me for someone else. Our entire marriage has been built on a foundation of lies so complete and systematic that I wonder if Elena even remembers what the truth feels like anymore. "Since before our wedding," I repeat, and my voice sounds strangely calm given the magnitude of what she's just admitted. "You married me while in love with another man, and you've been conducting an affair throughout our entire marriage." "It's not an affair," Elena says quickly, but her denial lacks conviction. We haven't been physical. It's emotional. It's about connection and understanding, and shared dreams. The distinction she's trying to make between emotional and physical betrayal might matter to some people, but to me it's irrelevant. She's been giving another man the intimacy and devotion that should have belonged to her husband, and she's been using my money to support their relationship. Whether or not they've been sleeping together is less important than the fact that she's been living a lie for months while I believed we were building a real marriage together. Emotional affair, I say, testing the words to see how they feel. You've been emotionally intimate with another man while married to me, supporting him financially, and planning to leave me for him. Does that about cover it? Elena nods miserably, and I realize that she expected this confession to make her feel better, to relieve the burden of living a double life, but instead she looks more miserable than I've ever seen her. Maybe she's finally understanding the magnitude of what she's done, or maybe she's realizing that Dylan might not be as committed to their future together as she believed. I'll file for divorce tomorrow, I say, and Elena's head snaps up as if she's surprised by how quickly I've accepted her decision. I'll have my lawyers draw up the papers, and you can move out whenever you're ready. The look of shock on Elena's face tells me that she expected me to fight for our marriage, to beg her to stay, to promise to change and become the kind of man she thinks Dylan is. But I've spent the last hour watching her systematically destroy every bit of trust and respect I had for her. And I have no interest in trying to convince someone to love me who has already given her heart to someone else. Just like that? She asks, and there's something almost disappointed in her voice. You're not going to try to save our marriage? Elena, I say gently, because despite everything, I don't want to be cruel to her. You just told me that you've been in love with another man since before our wedding, that you've been lying to me for months, and that you stole my father's watch to support your boyfriend. What exactly do you think there is left to save? She stares at me for a long moment, and I can see her struggling to find an answer that makes sense, but we both know that she's destroyed something that can't be repaired. The woman I married was never real. She was a character Elena played while planning her escape to a different life with a different man. I should pack, she says finally, and there's a flatness in her voice now, as if she's emotionally exhausted by the effort of maintaining her deceptions for so long. I can stay with my mother until Dylan and I find a place together. I nod, not trusting myself to speak, because the mention of her mother, Carmen, brings up memories of a woman who never seemed to approve of me or our marriage, who always looked at our house and our lifestyle with a calculating expression that I had dismissed as normal protective maternal instincts, but now wonder if it might have been something else entirely. Elena turns to go upstairs, then pauses at the bottom of the grand staircase that my great-grandfather built when he first renovated this house. Marcus, she says without turning around, I really am sorry about your father's watch. I know it meant a lot to you. It was all I had left of him, I say quietly, and my voice breaks slightly on the words. It was the only thing that connected me to him after the accident, and you sold it for rent money. Elena's shoulders slump, and for just a moment she looks genuinely ashamed of what she's done. Maybe I can get it back, she offers. Maybe Dylan can find the money somewhere else. But we both know that's not going to happen, because Dylan Torres is a struggling artist who apparently can't even pay his own rent, let alone come up with $50,000 to buy back a watch he never should have received the proceeds from in the first place. My father's watch is gone forever, sold to a pawn shop to solve another man's financial problems, and no amount of apology or regret can change that. I watch Elena climb the stairs to our bedroom, her silk dress rustling against the mahogany banister that my father polished himself every Sunday when I was a child because he said it was important to take care of the things that took care of you. She disappears into the room where we've been sleeping together for 6 months while she dreamed of another man, and I realize that I'm standing alone in the house my family built, surrounded by 4 generations of carefully preserved memories, with nothing left of my father except the receipt from the pawn shop where his watch was sold to pay his successor's rent. The next 3 hours pass in a blur of phone calls to lawyers and accountants, paperwork that needs to be signed, asset lists that need to be compiled, and the systematic dismantling of a marriage that apparently never existed in the first place. Elena moves quietly around upstairs, packing her clothes and jewelry and the other possessions she accumulated during our brief time together, while I sit in my father's study surrounded by the business documents and family photographs that represent the real foundation of my life. By midnight, Elena has loaded 2 suitcases into her BMW and is standing in the foyer with her purse and car keys, looking around the house one last time, as if she's trying to memorize details she knows she'll never see again. She looks smaller somehow, younger and more vulnerable than the confident woman who kissed me goodbye this morning while planning to betray me with another man. "I'll send someone for the rest of my things," she says, not quite meeting my eyes. "And Marcus, I hope you find someone who can love you the way you deserve to be loved." The irony of her wishing me love while leaving me for another man is so sharp that I almost laugh. But instead, I just nod and watch as she opens the front door and steps out into the night. Her car starts on the first try, the engine purring quietly as she backs down the circular driveway and disappears through the iron gates that will probably never open for her again. I lock the door behind her and walk through the empty house, turning off lights and checking windows with the automatic precision of someone who has performed these same tasks every night for years. But tonight, everything feels different, charged with the knowledge that Elena has been moving through these same rooms while living a completely different life in her mind, planning her escape while pretending to build a future with me. In our bedroom, my bedroom now, I suppose, Elena has left behind the scent of her perfume and a few items that weren't worth packing. Hair products on the bathroom counter, a romance novel on her nightstand, a framed photo of us from our honeymoon that she's turned face down on the dresser. The bed is still made with the expensive sheets she insisted we needed, but it looks different now, like a stage set after the performance has ended. I sit on the edge of the bed and pull out my phone to check the messages that have been accumulating while I dealt with the destruction of my marriage. And that's when I see it. A text from Dylan Torres sent to Elena's phone 2 hours ago, probably while she was packing upstairs. The message preview shows just enough to make my blood run cold. "Baby, I can't wait for you to finally be free of him. Once you get your settlement, we can travel to Europe, and I can show you." I don't read the rest, but I don't need to. Elena and Dylan have been planning not just her departure, but my financial exploitation, assuming that she'll receive a substantial divorce settlement that will fund their romantic European adventure. They've been counting on my money to finance their new life together, and I realize that Elena's confession tonight wasn't driven by guilt or love. It was driven by greed and the anticipation of what they believe will be a profitable divorce. The rage that fills me is different from anything I've ever experienced, cold and calculating rather than hot and impulsive, and I understand for the first time why my father always said that business is personal and personal is business. Elena hasn't just betrayed me as a husband. She's attacked my family's legacy and tried to steal resources that took generations to build. This isn't a simple case of a marriage that didn't work out. This is systematic fraud conducted by someone I trusted with access to everything my ancestors died to protect. I call my lawyer, even though it's past midnight, because Douglas Chen, no relation, despite the shared surname, is the kind of attorney who answers his phone at any hour for clients who pay his retainer. He listens without interruption as I explain the situation, occasionally asking for clarification about dates and amounts and documentary evidence, and I can hear him taking notes as I talk. "Marcus," Douglas says when I finish, "I need to ask you some difficult questions, and I need you to answer them honestly. Do you have any reason to believe that Elena's relationship with this Dylan Torres was purely financial on her part?" The question catches me off guard, because I've been so focused on Elena's emotional betrayal that I haven't considered the possibility that she might have been running a more complex con. "What do you mean?" I mean, is it possible that Elena married you specifically to gain access to your wealth, and that her relationship with Dylan was part of a larger plan to defraud you? Douglas's voice is careful and professional, but I can hear the concern underneath. Because if that's the case, we're dealing with something much more serious than adultery and irreconcilable differences. I think about Elena's casual attitude toward selling my father's watch, her immediate demand for a divorce once she was caught, her apparent assumption that she would receive a substantial settlement, and the text message about using her settlement to travel to Europe with Dylan. I think about how quickly she shifted from tearful apologies to defiant justifications to cold demands, as if she had rehearsed each phase of the conversation. I think it's possible, I say slowly, and hearing myself say the words makes me realize that I've married a woman who may have never loved me at all, who may have seen me as nothing more than a target for an elaborate theft. I think Elena may have been planning this from the beginning. In that case, Douglas says, we need to move very quickly to protect your assets and gather evidence before Elena and her accomplices realize that you're onto them. I'm going to call a forensic accountant who specializes in marital fraud, and I want you to compile every document you can find related to Elena's activities and your joint finances. The word accomplices sends a chill down my spine because it implies that Elena wasn't acting alone, that there might be other people involved in whatever scheme she's been running. I think about her mother, Carmen, who always seemed to know a suspicious amount about Chen Industries' business operations, who asked pointed questions about our financial arrangements during family dinners, who encouraged Elena to insist on being added to certain accounts and legal documents. How long might something like this have been in planning? I ask, though I'm not sure I want to know the answer. Sophisticated marital fraud schemes can take years to set up and execute, Douglas says grimly. If Elena specifically targeted you, rather than simply falling into temptation after your marriage, we could be looking at a conspiracy that began long before you ever met her. I hang up the phone and walk through the house again. But this time I'm not checking locks and windows. I'm looking at everything with new eyes, trying to identify what Elena might have photographed or documented or stolen during her 6 months living here. The safe where my father's watch was kept shows no signs of tampering, which means Elena either knew the combination or watched me open it enough times to memorize the sequence. The filing cabinets in my home office are still locked, but Elena had access to the keys, and there's no way to know what documents she might have copied. In the kitchen, I find Elena's laptop abandoned on the breakfast table, its screen dark, but the power light still glowing. She left in such a hurry that she forgot to take it with her, and I realize that this computer might contain evidence of everything she's been planning. I know I shouldn't access it without a warrant or my lawyer's permission, but the machine is technically in my house, and Elena is technically still my wife, and I need to know what I'm dealing with. The laptop isn't password protected, which surprises me until I realize that Elena probably never expected me to look at it. Her email is still open, showing months of correspondence with Dylan Torres that goes far beyond the friendly, artistic discussions she had described. The messages between them are intimate and detailed, planning not just their emotional relationship but their financial future, and I realize that Elena has been living a completely separate life that includes detailed discussions about what they'll do with my money once their plan is complete. But the emails that make my blood run cold are the ones between Elena and her mother, Carmen, because they reveal a level of planning and coordination that goes back over a year before Elena and I even met. Carmen has been researching my family's business interests, social connections, and financial vulnerabilities, providing Elena with detailed information about how to approach me, what to say, how to make herself appealing to someone with my background and resources. Remember, Carmen writes in an email dated 8 months before our first meeting, Men like Marcus Chen think they're too smart to be fooled by women. You need to make him feel like he's choosing you, not like you're pursuing him. Let him believe that you're the kind of woman who doesn't care about money, and he'll be desperate to share his wealth with you. The coldly calculating tone of the message makes me understand that I haven't just been betrayed by my wife. I've been targeted by a family of criminals who identified me as a mark and planned their approach with the precision of a military operation. Elena didn't fall in love with me, and then fall out of love with me for Dylan Torres. She never loved me at all. I was nothing more than a job to her, a target to be manipulated and exploited until she had extracted as much value as possible. I read through months of emails detailing Elena's progress in gaining my trust, her mother's advice about how to handle various situations, and their joint planning for the extraction phase, when Elena would leave me and claim her share of the wealth she had helped them identify and access. Dylan Torres isn't Elena's true love. He's her partner in crime. The person who will help her enjoy the money she steals from me while providing emotional cover for what is essentially an elaborate theft. The worst part is reading Elena's descriptions of our most intimate moments, our private conversations, our plans for the future, all recorded in clinical detail and shared with her criminal partners as evidence of how successfully she was manipulating me. Every kiss, every shared laugh, every moment when I thought we were building something real together was actually Elena gathering intelligence to better exploit my weaknesses. Marcus is very sentimental about his father. Elena writes to Carmen after the 1-year anniversary of my father's death. He keeps talking about honoring his legacy and living up to his example. I think we can use that to make him more generous with assets transfers, especially if I frame things as investments in our future family. The reference to our future family makes me sick, because Elena and I had been talking about having children, planning for a life together that would extend the Chen family legacy into the next generation. But Elena was only participating in those conversations to gather information about how much access to family wealth children would provide her, calculating the long-term value of different extraction strategies. I closed the laptop and called Douglas back, even though it's now after 2 a.m. He answers on the first ring, as if he's been expecting my call. "It's worse than we thought," I say without preamble. "Elena and her mother have been planning this for over a year. I have emails going back to before Elena and I met, detailing their research into my family and their strategy for approaching me." "Forward me everything," Douglas says immediately. "Don't delete anything. Don't move anything. Just forward every suspicious email to my secure address. We need to preserve the evidence exactly as you found it." "What are we dealing with?" I ask, though I think I already know the answer. "Criminal conspiracy, marriage fraud, theft, probably racketeering if we can establish that this is part of a larger pattern," Douglas says grimly. "Marcus, Elena, and her family aren't just cheating on you. They're operating what sounds like a sophisticated criminal enterprise that targets wealthy men for systematic exploitation." The words criminal enterprise echo in my mind as I forward Elena's emails to Douglas, because they make me realize that I might not be Elena's first victim. If Carmen has been planning these kinds of operations for years, there might be other men who have been targeted, manipulated, and robbed by the same family, using the same techniques. "How many other people do you think they've done this to?" I ask. "That's something the FBI will need to determine," Douglas says, and the mention of federal law enforcement makes me understand that this situation has moved far beyond a simple divorce case. "But Marcus, I need you to understand that once we report this to the authorities, there's no going back. Elena and her family will be arrested, and this will become a very public criminal case." The thought of our marriage and its destruction becoming public knowledge is humiliating, but the alternative, allowing Elena and her family to continue victimizing other people, is worse. I think about other men who might be sitting in their empty houses right now, wondering how their wives could have betrayed them so completely, not knowing that they were never wives at all, but professional criminals executing a planned theft. Report it, I say. Report all of it. Other people need to be protected. Douglas promises to contact the appropriate authorities first thing in the morning, and I spend the rest of the night reading through Elena's communications, assembling a timeline of her criminal activities, and trying to understand how I could have been so completely deceived by someone I shared my bed with for 6 months. The sun rises over Puget Sound as I sit in my father's study, surrounded by evidence of the most sophisticated betrayal I've ever encountered. And I realize that Elena has not only stolen my money and my trust, she's stolen my faith in my own judgment. How can I ever trust another person if I was so wrong about someone I lived with every day for months? But as the morning light fills the room where my father taught me everything about business and integrity and the importance of protecting what you love, I also feel something else growing alongside the hurt and anger. A cold determination to make sure that Elena and her family pay for what they've done, not just to me, but to however many other victims they've destroyed over the years. Elena wanted to play games with my life and my family's legacy. Now she's going to learn what happens when you target someone who has spent his entire life learning how to win. 3 years earlier. The alarm clock screams at 6:30 a.m., just like it has every morning for the past week. But when I reach over to turn it off, my hand touches nothing but cool, empty sheets. The other side of the bed is undisturbed, as if Elena never came home last night, which means she's probably still at Dylan's studio pretending to plan some artistic collaboration while actually planning my destruction. Except that's impossible, because Elena is lying next to me, her dark hair spread across the pillow, her breathing deep and peaceful, her hand resting on my chest exactly as it was when I fell asleep. I'm in our bedroom in the Chen family mansion, sunlight streaming through the tall windows, and Elena is wearing the ivory silk nightgown I bought her for our honeymoon. But I remember everything. I remember discovering my father's missing watch. I remember Elena's confession about Dylan Torres. I remember finding her laptop full of criminal correspondence with her mother. I remember calling Douglas at midnight to report marriage fraud to the FBI. I remember every detail of the worst night of my life with perfect clarity. But somehow I'm waking up on what appears to be a normal Tuesday morning, with my wife sleeping peacefully beside me. I sit up carefully, trying not to wake Elena, and look around the room for any sign that last night's revelations actually happened. My father's watch gleams on the nightstand where it always sits, unmarked by pawn shop tickets or police evidence tags. Elena's laptop is closed on her desk, not abandoned in the kitchen with incriminating emails still displayed on the screen. Everything looks exactly as it should in the bedroom of a happily married couple, except for the fact that I remember discovering my wife was a criminal who never loved me. I slip out of bed and walk to the window, looking out at the perfectly manicured grounds and the glimpse of Puget Sound beyond the trees. The date on my phone shows that it's 3 years earlier than the night I remember, which means either I've had the most vivid and detailed nightmare of my life, or something impossible has happened, and I've somehow returned to the early days of my marriage with full knowledge of what Elena will do. Elena stirs behind me, making the soft sounds of someone waking up naturally. And when I turn around, she's stretching languidly and smiling at me with what I once believed was genuine affection, but now recognize as carefully calculated manipulation. "Good morning, husband," she says, her voice husky with sleep and warm with an intimacy that I now know is completely fake. "You're up early? Important meetings today?" 3 years ago, or yesterday, depending on how I measure time, I would have returned to bed and kissed her good morning, and told her about my schedule while she pretended to care about my business responsibilities. But now I study her face for any sign of the coldly calculating woman I discovered last night, and I see subtle indicators that I missed before. The way her eyes assess my reaction to her words, the practiced nature of her smile, the slight tension in her posture that suggests she's always performing rather than simply being herself. I had an interesting dream, I say carefully, watching her expression for any change. About pawn shops and missing watches and marriage fraud? Elena's smile doesn't waver, but I catch a tiny flicker of something. Surprise, concern, in her eyes before she covers it with a laugh that sounds completely natural, but which I now know is as fake as everything else about her. "That sounds like a nightmare, not a dream," she says, sitting up and reaching for me with the kind of casual intimacy that took me months to develop, but which she seems to have mastered instantly. "Too much stress from work, probably. You need to learn to relax, Marcus." The way she dismisses my dream, while simultaneously suggesting that work stress is affecting my mental state, makes me realize that Elena has been systematically undermining my confidence and judgment from the very beginning of our relationship. Every time I expressed suspicion or concern about anything, she redirected my attention to my supposedly excessive work habits or my need to learn to trust people. "Maybe you're right," I say, allowing her to pull me back toward the bed while my mind races through everything I know about the next 3 years. "Elena, what do you know about Dylan Torres?" This time I definitely see a reaction. A momentary stillness, a quick calculation behind her eyes. But she recovers so smoothly that I almost convince myself I imagined it. "Dylan from college?" she asks, her voice perfectly casual. "I haven't talked to him in ages. Why?" But I know she's lying, because in my timeline Dylan has been calling and texting her constantly, and she's been supporting him financially while claiming he's like a brother to her. If she's pretending not to have recent contact with him, it means their affair either hasn't started yet or is being conducted more secretly than I realized. "Just curious," I say, settling back into bed beside her while planning my next move. "I was thinking about your college friends and wondering if you missed any of them." Elena nestles against my side, her head on my shoulder, and I feel the familiar warmth and softness that once made me believe I was the luckiest man alive. But now I know that every touch is calculated. Every moment of apparent intimacy is a performance designed to keep me off balance and emotionally dependent on her affection. "I miss some things about college," she says thoughtfully, and I can practically feel her choosing her words carefully. The freedom, the creativity, the sense that anything was possible. But I'm happy with our life, Marcus. I'm happy with you. The lie is so smooth and confident that I'm impressed despite myself, but I also notice that she's already planting seeds for her future justifications. When she eventually claims that I stifled her creativity and freedom, she'll be able to point back to conversations like this one as evidence that she tried to communicate her feelings. "What kind of creativity do you miss?" I ask, genuinely curious about how she's planning to manipulate me. "Art, writing, music?" "All of it," Elena says with a wistful sigh that would have broken my heart 3 years ago but now sounds like bad theater. "Sometimes I feel like I gave up too much of myself to be the perfect wife for you." And there it is, the foundation of her entire manipulation strategy. Elena is establishing herself as the victim of my success, the woman who sacrificed her dreams to support my career, so that when she eventually betrays me, I'll blame myself for not appreciating her enough. She's been playing a psychological game so sophisticated that I never realized I was a participant. "What if you didn't have to give up anything?" I say, testing her reaction. "What if you could pursue your creative interests while we're married?" Elena lifts her head to look at me, and I see genuine surprise in her expression, as if I've said something that doesn't fit with her expectations or plans. You would be okay with that? Why wouldn't I be? I ask, though I'm starting to understand that Elena has been deliberately limiting her own activities to create artificial constraints that she can later blame on me. Elena, I want you to be happy. I want you to pursue whatever interests you. The look of confusion on her face makes me realize that she's been expecting me to be controlling and possessive, and my support for her independence has disrupted whatever narrative she's been constructing about our marriage. If I remove the obstacles she's been planning to rebel against, she'll have to find new justifications for her eventual betrayal. I'll think about that, she says finally. And I can practically see her mind working to adjust her strategy based on this unexpected development. Maybe I could take some art classes or join a creative writing group. That sounds wonderful, I say, and I mean it, because if Elena is pursuing her own interests legitimately, she'll have less time and energy to devote to planning my destruction. In fact, why don't you start looking into classes today? Elena stares at me for a long moment, and I realize that she's trying to figure out if I'm being sincere or if this is some kind of test. The fact that she's suspicious of my support tells me everything I need to know about her actual feelings toward me and our marriage. Okay, she says slowly. I'll look into it. But I can see her already calculating how to turn my supportiveness into a weapon against me, probably planning to claim that I encouraged her artistic pursuits only as a way to keep her busy and distracted from our relationship problems. Elena is so committed to viewing me as the villain in her story that she can't accept any evidence that contradicts that narrative. I spend the morning going through the motions of my normal routine: shower, breakfast, reading financial reports while Elena makes coffee and talks about her plans for the day. But everything feels surreal, like I'm an actor playing a role in a play where I'm the only person who knows how the story ends. Elena performs her part perfectly, the devoted new wife who wants nothing more than to make her husband happy. But I see the calculation behind every gesture and the emptiness behind every smile. At Chen Industries, I sit in my father's office, my office now, though I still think of it as his, and try to figure out how to use my knowledge of the future to protect myself and my family's legacy. I know that Elena and her mother, Carmen, are planning to systematically rob me, but I don't have any evidence of their intentions yet, which means I can't simply call the police and have them arrested. Instead, I need to gather evidence of their criminal conspiracy while appearing to be the same trusting, naive husband they expect me to be. It's a dangerous game, because if they realize I'm onto them, they might accelerate their timeline or disappear entirely. But it's the only way to ensure that they face justice for what they're planning to do. I call Douglas Chen and ask him to quietly investigate Elena's background and her family's financial history, claiming that I want to surprise her with a generous gift and need to understand her mother's situation. Douglas agrees to conduct a discreet investigation, and I make a mental note to change the combination on my home safe and remove Elena's access to sensitive business documents. The hardest part is going home that evening and pretending that everything is normal, kissing Elena hello and asking about her day, while knowing that every word out of her mouth is part of an elaborate deception. She's excited about the art classes she's researched, chattering about different techniques and instructors with what seems like genuine enthusiasm, and for a moment I almost convince myself that maybe she really does have artistic interests that have nothing to do with Dylan Torres or her plan to rob me. But then she mentions that one of the classes is taught by a really innovative instructor who used to show his work in galleries all over the city, and I recognize the description as probably referring to Dylan, which means Elena is already maneuvering to reconnect with him under the guise of pursuing her creative interests. That sounds fascinating, I say, because if Elena is going to lead me to Dylan Torres, I want to be prepared for what I'll find. What's the instructor's name? Dylan something, Elena says with perfectly crafted casualness. Torres, I think. Apparently he's quite talented, but struggling to get the recognition he deserves. The way she delivers this information, as if Dylan's name means nothing to her, as if she's just discovered him while researching art classes, makes me understand that Elena is a much more sophisticated liar than I gave her credit for. She's not just hiding an existing relationship with Dylan. She's constructing an entire false narrative about how they'll reconnect that will provide cover for the affair she's planning to conduct. Maybe I should meet him, I say, watching Elena's face carefully. If you're going to be spending time in his classes, I'd like to know what kind of person he is. The flash of panic in Elena's eyes is so quick that I almost miss it. But it's there, and it confirms what I already knew. She has no intention of letting me anywhere near Dylan Torres, because his reaction to meeting me would expose their prior relationship and destroy her careful plans. Oh, that's not necessary, Elena says quickly. I'm sure he's very professional. And anyway, you're much too busy to worry about my art classes. The speed with which she shuts down my suggestion while simultaneously implying that I'm too busy to care about her activities tells me that Elena has been planning this conversation for weeks, preparing responses to any inconvenient questions I might ask. But she didn't expect me to volunteer to meet Dylan, which means I've already started disrupting her carefully laid plans. Over the next several weeks, I develop a routine of appearing to trust Elena completely, while quietly investigating every aspect of her life and background. Douglas's investigation reveals that Carmen has indeed been researching my family's business interests for over a year, using her job cleaning houses in wealthy neighborhoods to gather information about potential targets. Elena's educational background includes several courses in psychology and manipulation techniques that she never mentioned to me, and her financial history shows a pattern of dating wealthy men for short periods before moving on to new targets. But the most disturbing discovery is that Elena and Dylan Torres have been in constant contact since before our wedding, despite her claims that she hasn't spoken to him in years. Their relationship includes detailed planning for what they call the extraction, which involves Elena gaining access to as much of my wealth as possible before disappearing with Dylan to start a new life in Europe. The coldly calculating nature of their communications makes me realize that Elena has never felt even a moment of genuine affection for me. I was nothing more than a job to her, a target to be manipulated and exploited until she had stolen everything she could carry. Every intimate moment we shared, every time she told me she loved me, every plan we made for our future together was part of an elaborate performance designed to keep me off guard while she robbed me. As I learn more about Elena's true nature, I also begin changing my own behavior in subtle ways designed to protect my assets and gather evidence of her crimes. I install hidden cameras in our house, change passwords and access codes to sensitive accounts, and begin documenting every suspicious conversation or activity. Elena notices some of these changes but attributes them to normal security precautions rather than suspicion of her specifically. The most difficult part is maintaining physical and emotional intimacy with someone I now know is my enemy. When Elena kisses me goodnight or tells me about her day or makes plans for our future together, I have to respond as if I believe her completely while knowing that every word is a lie designed to manipulate me. It's like living with a beautiful, deadly snake that could strike at any moment. But I also find myself developing a cold satisfaction in outmaneuvering Elena and her family, in building a case against them while they remain completely unaware that their target has become their hunter. They've underestimated me because they see me as an emotionally vulnerable mark, rather than someone with the intelligence and resources to fight back effectively. The turning point comes when Elena announces that she's been accepted into Dylan's advanced art class, and will be spending several evenings a week at his studio. She presents this information with excitement and gratitude, thanking me for encouraging her creative pursuits, but I can see the anticipation in her eyes as she imagines finally being able to conduct her affair openly while maintaining the fiction that it's just an educational activity. "That's wonderful," I say, and I genuinely mean it, because Elena's increased time with Dylan will provide me with opportunities to gather evidence while giving them both a false sense of security. "I'm so proud of you for pursuing your dreams." Elena's smile falters for just a moment, and I realize that my consistent support and encouragement has been undermining her ability to cast me as the controlling, unsupportive husband she needs me to be for her narrative to work. She wants me to be jealous and suspicious so that she can justify her betrayal as rebellion against my possessiveness, but instead, I'm being understanding and generous, which makes her the clear villain in any objective analysis of our relationship. "You're not worried about me spending so much time away from home?" she asks, and I can hear her hoping that I'll express some concern or jealousy that she can later use against me. "Elena," I say gently, taking her hands in mine and looking directly into her eyes, "I want you to be happy and fulfilled. If art makes you happy, then I want you to pursue it as seriously as you like." The look of confusion and frustration that crosses her face confirms that my supportiveness is disrupting her plans in ways she hadn't anticipated. She needs me to be controlling and possessive to justify what she's planning to do, but instead, I'm being the kind of husband that any reasonable person would consider supportive and loving. As Elena begins spending her evenings at Dylan's studio, I use the time to continue my investigation and strengthen my legal position. I work with Douglas to create ironclad asset protection strategies, transfer sensitive business information to secure locations Elena can't access, and build a comprehensive file documenting her criminal activities and intentions. I also begin developing relationships with people who can serve as witnesses to Elena's behavior and my own, making sure that there will be plenty of credible testimony about my character and the true nature of our marriage when the time comes to expose her crimes. I invite friends and business associates to dinner more frequently, encourage Elena to host social events where her manipulative behavior will be observed by multiple witnesses, and generally create a public record of our marriage that contradicts any claims she might make about my being abusive or controlling. The most satisfying part of this process is watching Elena become increasingly frustrated as her attempts to create conflict and drama fail to achieve their intended results. She tries to pick fights about my work schedule, my family's expectations, my lack of spontaneity, but I respond to every provocation with patience and understanding, refusing to give her the explosive confrontations she needs to justify her planned betrayal. "Sometimes I feel like you don't really see me," Elena says one evening, after returning from Dylan's studio, clearly fishing for the kind of emotional reaction that she can later claim as evidence of our relationship problems. "What do you mean?" I ask, setting aside my laptop and giving her my full attention. "I see you every day, Elena. I see how talented you are, how passionate you are about your art, how much you've grown since you started taking classes." She stares at me for a long moment, clearly frustrated that her attempt to create conflict has backfired into a conversation about my appreciation for her development. Sometimes I wonder if we really know each other. "I'd like to know you better," I say sincerely, because the more Elena reveals about her true self, the stronger my case against her becomes. "Tell me more about what you're learning in your classes. Tell me about Dylan's teaching methods." The mention of Dylan's name makes Elena tense slightly, but she covers it by launching into what sounds like a prepared speech about artistic techniques and creative exploration. As she talks, I notice that she's careful to present Dylan as a professional instructor rather than a friend, maintaining the fiction that their relationship is purely educational, despite the fact that I know they've been planning their European escape for months. "He sounds like an interesting teacher," I say when she finishes her presentation. "Maybe I could meet him sometime, just to thank him for inspiring you." "Oh, that's not necessary," Elena says quickly, and the panic in her voice confirms that she's terrified of Dylan and me being in the same room together. He's very focused on his students' development, not social interactions. The speed with which she rejects my suggestion tells me that Elena and Dylan have probably discussed this scenario and decided that any contact between us would be too dangerous for their plans. They need to keep their worlds completely separate to maintain their deception, which means they're vulnerable to any situation that forces them to interact with me simultaneously. As the weeks pass, I continue to gather evidence while appearing to be the same trusting husband Elena expects me to be. I document her lies about where she's going and what she's doing, record conversations where she mentions financial information that she shouldn't have access to, and photograph documents that she's removed from my home office without permission. The most damning evidence comes when I discover that Elena has been taking pictures of sensitive business documents and sending them to an unknown email address that my computer forensics expert traces back to Carmen. Elena and her mother have been conducting industrial espionage against Chen Industries, stealing confidential information that could be used to damage my family's business or sold to our competitors. This discovery transforms my understanding of what Elena and her family are planning. They're not just trying to steal my personal wealth through marriage fraud. They're attempting to destroy my family's business empire and steal corporate secrets that took generations to develop. This is economic warfare disguised as a personal relationship, and the scope of their ambitions makes me realize that they've probably been planning this attack for years. I share this information with Douglas, who brings in federal investigators specializing in corporate espionage and organized crime. The FBI is very interested in Elena's family and their activities, particularly when they learn that Carmen has been targeting multiple wealthy families using similar techniques. Elena and Dylan are part of a larger criminal enterprise that has been systematically robbing successful businessmen for years, and I'm apparently their most ambitious target to date. They chose you specifically because of your family's prominence and your recent inheritance, Agent Sarah Martinez explains during a briefing at Douglas's office. Elena has been preparing for this operation for over 2 years, studying your habits, your social connections, your business interests, and your psychological profile. The revelation that Elena spent 2 years learning everything about me before we even met makes me understand that our entire relationship has been built on a foundation of criminal deception so sophisticated that it borders on professional-level espionage. She didn't fall in love with me and then decide to betray me. She identified me as a target and planned every aspect of our courtship to maximize her access to my wealth and information. "What's the plan?" I ask, because I'm ready to stop playing defense and start taking action against the people who have turned my life into their criminal enterprise. "We're going to let Elena and Dylan execute their plan," Agent Martinez says, "but we'll be monitoring everything they do and gathering evidence of their crimes. When they make their move, we'll be ready to arrest them and dismantle their entire operation." The next few months pass in a strange combination of normal domestic life and covert law enforcement operation. Elena continues to play the role of devoted wife while secretly preparing to betray me. And I continue to play the role of trusting husband while helping federal agents build a case against her. We have dinner together, attend social events, make plans for the future, all while both of us are lying about our true intentions and loyalties. The most surreal part is that Elena seems to be enjoying our marriage even as she plans to destroy it. She laughs at my jokes, shares stories about her day, and shows physical affection that feels genuine, even though I know it's completely calculated. Sometimes I catch myself almost forgetting what she really is, almost believing that the woman who kisses me goodnight actually cares about me, until I remember the emails where she describes me as pathetically easy to manipulate and discusses the best strategies for extracting maximum value before disappearing. The endgame begins when Elena announces that Dylan has been offered an opportunity to show his work in European galleries, and that she's been invited to accompany him as his artistic advisor. She presents this information as an exciting opportunity for her creative development, asking for my support and understanding as she pursues this chance to expand her artistic horizons. "How long would you be gone?" I ask, though I already know from intercepting their communications that they're planning to disappear permanently with as much of my money as they can steal. "Just a few months initially," Elena says, her eyes bright with anticipation that she's trying to disguise as artistic excitement. "But if things go well, it could turn into a longer opportunity. Dylan thinks I have real potential as a curator and advisor." The mention of longer opportunity confirms that Elena is preparing me for the possibility that she might not return from this trip, laying groundwork for her permanent disappearance while making it sound like a natural progression of her artistic career rather than the culmination of a criminal conspiracy. "That sounds like an amazing opportunity," I say, and Elena's face lights up with relief and gratitude that I'm not opposing her plans. "When would you leave?" "In about a month," Elena says. "Dylan wants to take advantage of the spring gallery season, and he thinks the timing is perfect for launching this kind of international collaboration." Over the next month, Elena accelerates her preparations for departure while I work with federal agents to ensure that every aspect of her criminal plan is documented and ready for prosecution. She increases her theft of corporate documents, transfers larger amounts of money to accounts she thinks I don't know about, and makes arrangements for selling assets that she believes she'll be able to claim in our eventual divorce. The most telling sign of Elena's true intentions comes when she begins emotionally distancing herself from me, gradually reducing physical affection and intimate conversation, as if she's preparing herself psychologically for permanent separation. She stops making long-term plans for our marriage, avoids discussions about children or future goals, and generally behaves like someone who is already mentally divorced, even though she's still living in my house and sharing my bed. 3 days before Elena's scheduled departure, she makes her final move by attempting to drug me during dinner. The FBI has been expecting this based on intercepted communications between Elena and Dylan about the need to incapacitate me long enough to complete their theft of liquid assets and important documents, and Agent Martinez has prepared me for what to do when it happens. Elena serves my favorite meal with wine that tastes slightly bitter, and within an hour I'm feeling drowsy and disoriented in a way that has nothing to do with alcohol consumption. I excuse myself to lie down, pretending to succumb to whatever drug Elena has given me, while she believes I'm unconscious. Elena moves through our house, systematically stealing everything of value that she can carry, including jewelry, cash, important documents, and several pieces of artwork that belong to my family. Federal agents document everything Elena steals while allowing her to believe her plan is succeeding, and they follow her to Dylan's studio where she delivers the stolen goods and celebrates what they believe is their successful robbery. The audio and video surveillance of their celebration includes detailed admissions of guilt, discussions of their criminal methodology, and plans for using their stolen wealth to build a new life in Europe. Elena returns home before dawn, acting as if nothing has happened, and I pretend to wake up normally while she prepares for what she believes will be her final day as my wife. She's nervous and excited, chattering about her upcoming trip while carefully avoiding any mention of the fact that she's just committed multiple felonies and plans never to see me again. "I'm going to miss you so much," Elena says as she kisses me goodbye. And the irony of her words makes me want to laugh because she's planning to disappear forever in less than 12 hours. I'll miss you too, I say, because it's true in a way. I'll miss the woman I thought Elena was, even though that woman never actually existed. Elena spends the day making final preparations for her escape, confirming travel arrangements, transferring money to offshore accounts, and coordinating with Dylan about their departure timeline. Federal agents monitor every communication and financial transaction, building an overwhelming case against both of them, while allowing them to believe they're on the verge of pulling off the perfect crime. That evening, Elena comes home with luggage for what she claims is a 3-month artistic residency in Europe, but which I know is actually her permanent escape from our marriage and my life. She's excited and nervous, talking rapidly about the opportunities ahead while carefully avoiding any discussion of our relationship or her plans for maintaining contact while she's gone. "Marcus," Elena says as we sit down to dinner, "I need to talk to you about something important." Here it comes, I think. Elena's prepared speech about why she's leaving me for Dylan Torres, her carefully constructed justification for betraying our marriage and stealing my family's wealth. I've been waiting for this moment for months, preparing my own responses while federal agents prepare to arrest her. "I've been thinking about our marriage," Elena continues, "and I've realized that I'm not happy. I haven't been happy for a long time, and I don't think I ever will be if I stay here." The casual cruelty of her words, delivered over dinner in the house my family built, while wearing jewelry I bought her after months of lying to my face, makes me understand that Elena has no more capacity for genuine emotion than a professional actress playing a role. She's not confessing because she feels guilty. She's confessing because she thinks I'm too drugged and confused to stop her from leaving. "What do you mean?" I ask, playing the part of the confused, heartbroken husband she expects me to be. "I mean, I want a divorce," Elena says, and there's a coldness in her voice now that I've never heard before. "I want to be with someone who understands me, someone who shares my dreams and my vision for the future." "Someone like Dylan Torres?" I ask, and Elena's face goes white as she realizes that I know about her affair. "How did you—" she begins, then stops herself as she recognizes that she's just admitted to the relationship she's been hiding for months. "Elena," I say gently, "I've known about your relationship with Dylan for quite some time. I've also known about your mother's involvement, your theft of corporate documents, your plans to steal my money and disappear to Europe, and your systematic deception of our entire marriage." Elena stares at me in shock, and I can see her mind racing as she tries to understand how her carefully planned deception has been discovered and what it means for her escape plans. "You're lying," she says finally, but her voice lacks conviction. "You don't know anything. You're just suspicious and paranoid because you can't trust anyone." "I have recordings of your conversations with Dylan," I say calmly. "I have copies of the emails between you and your mother. I have surveillance footage of you stealing documents from my office and photographing confidential business information. I have financial records showing every illegal transfer you've made and every asset you've stolen." Elena's face cycles through shock, disbelief, anger, and finally desperate calculation as she realizes that her perfect crime has been exposed from the beginning. "You can't prove anything," she says, but there's no confidence in her voice. "Actually," Agent Martinez says as she enters our dining room with several other federal agents, "we can prove everything. Elena Vasquez, you're under arrest for marriage fraud, theft, corporate espionage, and conspiracy to commit racketeering." The look of absolute terror on Elena's face as she realizes that federal agents have been watching her for months makes me feel something that might be satisfaction or might just be exhaustion. She's been so confident in her ability to manipulate and deceive that she never considered the possibility that her victim might be smarter than she expected. This is impossible, Elena whispers as Agent Martinez reads her rights. Marcus is too stupid to have figured this out on his own. Even in the moment of her arrest, Elena can't resist insulting me, can't acknowledge that I might have been capable of outwitting her sophisticated criminal operation. She's so committed to seeing me as a weak, naive mark that she can't accept evidence of my intelligence and competence. Actually, I say, as federal agents handcuff Elena and prepare to take her away, I figured it out 3 years ago. I've been waiting for you to commit enough crimes to ensure a substantial prison sentence. Elena stares at me in complete shock, and I realize that she's finally understanding that our entire marriage has been as much of a performance on my part as it has been on hers. While she was pretending to love me, to steal my money, I was pretending to trust her to gather evidence for her prosecution. 3 years ago? Elena whispers. But that's impossible. We've only been married for 6 months. Elena, I say gently, I think you're going to find that a lot of things are possible that you never considered. As federal agents escort Elena out of my house for the last time, I realize that I've successfully protected my family's legacy and ensured that a dangerous criminal enterprise has been dismantled. But I also realize that the experience has changed me in ways that I'm only beginning to understand, and that learning to trust another person after such complete betrayal might be the greatest challenge I'll ever face. But that's a problem for tomorrow. Tonight I'm going to sit in my father's study, surrounded by the business documents and family photographs that represent the real foundation of my life, and plan how to build something even stronger from the ashes of Elena's destruction. After all, Elena wanted to play chess with my life and my family's legacy. She just never realized she was playing against a grandmaster. And now, finally, I've won.